Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Saturday to you. Josh's Severe Weather. We are going to talk about the storm that is going to be moving into the Gulf next week with impacts on the northern Gulf Coast. And I'm going to take a stab here. It's early in this, as it hasn't formed yet, but I'm going to take a stab at where this system is going to form and where it's expected to track. Now, granted, this could still change, but I appreciate your time today and at least sticking with me and learning more about why I'm expecting this to happen. So we've got ourselves low pressure that is expected to form early next week across the northwestern Caribbean, and generally speaking, should be tracking northwest towards the vicinity of either the Yucatan Peninsula or the Yucatan Channel sometime towards the middle of next week. At that point, it will become potentially a tropical storm. The next name on the list is Helene. After that, conditions are somewhat favorable for intensification to hurricane strength. We are probably going to see this affecting either the central or eastern Gulf Coast, but a growing system with some uncertainty in the time frame of when exactly it may be making any kind of landfall, potentially as soon as next Thursday, but possibly getting stretched out beyond that into next weekend. Anybody in the red here, I do expect to have some impact from this. Obviously, it's still early, and until the low forms, this this track could still shift either west towards Louisiana or east closer to the Florida Peninsula. So that is the current forecast. You'll see across the Atlantic Basin a few areas that we're monitoring in addition to this potential low that has a 60% chance of becoming a tropical depression or storm in the next 7 days. I think that chance will continue to climb. You can see a couple of areas that we're watching today that have a very limited chance of developing further, 96L and Gordon, and then a 30% chance of development next week as a wave that moves off of Africa may have a chance to form into our next system. I want to draw this on the map for you guys here because I like making some art. All right, we like to have some fun here in the weather business. But anyway, that is what we're going to be tracking here. But I'm going to talk mostly in this video about this area here across the northwestern Caribbean. It is coming out of what's called a Central American gyre and into an area of more favorable lifting and divergence, which allows storms to form and to have lowering amounts of wind shear. And the general track takes it over the warmest portion here of the Atlantic Basin. You can see water temperatures here in the Northwest Caribbean are running in the upper 80s to close to 90 degrees. In the Gulf of Mexico, they remain in the mid 80s. So this will be tracking over some pretty warm water as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Even though the Western Gulf was cooled a little bit by Francine earlier last week, it is still running on the warm side here and still has plenty of what we call oceanic heat content for a stronger system to be fueled by that warmer water. So this is the area we're going to be tracking. It is flaring up here near the coast of Honduras and Nicaragua. Generally speaking, it is dealing with wind shear at this point. The track is going to be pretty slow for the next couple of days, and then it's going to move into an area where somewhere in here, and it could go this way first and linger longer, or it could try to take the shortcut to the right. But generally speaking, I think this area is the most likely area. This is eventually going to make some landfall by the time we get into the second portion of next week and maybe delayed till next weekend. Here are the two features we're watching in the Atlantic. Nothing super exciting at this point, but something we need to keep an eye on. In the Pacific, we may see a couple of disturbances here develop gradually into our next two systems. So a lot of the action right now is closer to land and should stay that way as we're in a phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is a pulse that goes across the equator that has areas of sinking air and rising air, but we're heading into a rising air situation here across this portion of the globe. Here's a closer look at what's spinning up here over the Western Caribbean between Nicaragua and Jamaica. Very heavy rainfall, but it is very broad at this point. There's no low-level circulation. And if you take a look at the satellite, you can see that there is a boundary here as well. And we also have some wind shear coming in from multiple directions. Wind shear from here and some northerly wind shear on the backside as well. So it's really not in a favorable position right now to develop. Now, that is expected to change, though, over the coming days. This is a look right now at what's the upper level divergence and convergence. And you can see where the numbers are positive here, all the way up to 30. There is a significant area where the air is going to grow and spread out. So we will see this area growing. But until it develops a core, it is going to be very slow evolving here. So good divergence, which favors development here over the next several days. But if you take a look here at the wind shear across the area, it is still fairly high. The areas in red are unfavorable for development. And if there's a center right here, it is in that area of red. You can kind of see here, strong northerly flow across the Gulf, going around the base of a trough, and then switching around to west-southwesterly. So as this trough is expected to lift out, we are going to see this area of more favorable wind shear here, low wind shear over the Pacific side, shift north and eastward. And by the time we get into maybe next Monday, Tuesday, or early Wednesday, that should favor development. The other challenge is how this may interact with the Yucatan Peninsula over here. Storms that go across typically weaken. So if it goes in this direction, like we saw with Beryl back in early July, it will weaken or take longer to form. However, if the system develops maybe a little bit farther east and tries to go up in this direction, it should have a pretty clear shot to strengthen up until about landfall or close to landfall. Until it forms here, we're not going to know exactly how that's going to play out. We can only really speculate. So that is what we're looking at here in the Atlantic. We have just really kind of ugly circulations here, two naked circulations, the remains of Gordon and the 96L. Both of them have some thunderstorm activity, but nothing over the center. 96L actually looks a little bit healthier right now than the remains of Gordon do, but that is what we're tracking across the Atlantic. So here is a, oops, let me get this off the screen. You guys can't even see it. Here's a look at the upper level pattern and just kind of taking a look at what's going to get this system to form. So you see the trough right now this weekend pinched off across the southern Gulf and the Northwest Caribbean. As we head into the end of the weekend, that trough begins to lift away. You kind of see this lifting out here. As we head into Monday and Tuesday, we turn into what's called an upper level anticyclone, a high pressure area aloft. And that area is in here, allowing this system to begin to develop and grow. The wind shear is moving out in this direction. You see how the colors have gotten light on us, and the stronger wind shear is up across the central and southern plains of the United States. But things are pretty favorable for this system to grow and to form into a depression and storm probably by next Tuesday, I would expect. As we go later into the week, you'll see the storm is expected to get picked up by a trough here. You can see the trough axis right here, which is going to protect the Western Gulf, in my opinion, from any kind of development or any kind of eventual track. I'll learn to talk here. And that should turn our steering flow to more southwesterly. And so as a result, any storm in this area may go north for a little bit, depending on where this goes, but eventually should make a northeasterly turn, I would expect, this time of the year. But the bigger question is, does that happen over in here, or does that happen over in here? And it's still a little bit too soon. Obviously, I'm taking the middle approach at this point, and my official forecast takes the storm to about Pensacola towards the end of next week. We're going to move along in this video because we don't have a lot of time, but this is a look here at the possibility of formation into a depression. And you can see by the time we get to Monday night and Tuesday morning, our chances are super high, up to 80 to 90% here by Tuesday morning, 90 to 100% by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And you can see kind of in general where the ensembles take this system. A likely storm here over the Yucatan, or perhaps just east and north of the Yucatan. And then you can see the highest chance for this is going to be right near Pensacola or Navarre Beach here in Destin. Probably the end of this upcoming week, or perhaps next weekend is when that storm may make landfall. But there are still chances for this to go all the way back here into the Western Gulf and come up into Louisiana, which we'd obviously hate to see after what happened with Francine. And there are still equal chances this could affect the Florida Peninsula, maybe not directly affecting the Keys, but maybe coming up towards the Tampa Bay area, towards the Big Bend, or towards Panama City at the very edge of the Big Bend and towards the Panhandle here. So again, chances are highest in the middle of this, but I think you guys have seen storms in the past where until they form, we don't quite know, and the track eventually shifts and shifts. We saw that with Francine, where the track had the system close to Beaumont and Port Arthur and ended up correcting to the right, having it hitting Morgan City, which was a significant shift. And it's very possible something like that could still happen here until this storm forms and gets into the Gulf. We're not going to know quite for sure. If you look at the ensembles, you'll see not only a spread in where this system goes. There are a few outliers that go to the Western Gulf, but let's face it, most of them are in here. But also quite a spread in intensity. Some stronger solutions in this area, some weaker solutions in here. Also some big speed differences. This runs through next Monday, the 30th at night, and several ensembles have this well inland here by the weekend, but there are still some that have it lingering into the southern Gulf of Mexico, which would add a lot more complexity to this forecast. For now, the consensus has a system in this area here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But again, we still don't quite know exactly how that's going to play out. The GFS is to the right of the European, and every ensemble member pretty much takes us into Florida, whether it's Pensacola or Cedar Key or even Southwest Florida remains to be determined. But you can see here, this is Friday afternoon. I may have the latest model coming in here. This is still trickling in no, I guess I don't. But you can see here, several ensemble members take this into this portion of Florida here late next week. But there are still quite a few members that have this system stuck in the southern Gulf, which increases the uncertainty level and slows down our system as well and gives it more time to possibly develop. The operational GFS model has an area of high pressure over the Gulf states this weekend and trough moving away from the east. That area of high pressure is going to shift to the east here by the middle of next week and will be centered over eastern Florida. We also see a pretty strong trough here moving southeastward here, diving down into the plains. You can see that trough right here. As a result, the storm's going to want to go around the periphery of the ridge and towards the direction of the trough, which is moving, generally speaking, southeast. So the lane opens up for something in here between the high and the trough. That's simple meteorology. The question mark is, where does the storm form and how quick does that trough get down there? Because we've seen quite a few adjustments here where models a few days ago had this area of high pressure much farther to the southeast and had this trough down in here and weaker. And as a result, there were more solutions going into Southwest Florida. That has shifted, and this upper low is still going to be quite a bit uncertain as we get into Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And it's possible it's still up in here. It's possible it's a little bit quicker, but all that is going to make a huge difference. You can see that GFS, generally speaking, thinks our storm's going to be over here ahead of our upcoming trough. But again, we don't exactly know the timing of this. You can see this upper level low here actually becomes cut off and retreats back to the west due to the strength of this high pressure zone here over Lake Ontario and Superior, or Lake Superior, not Lake Ontario, and the upper low that's just east of Lake Ontario. That's what I meant to say. So you can see here a lot of uncertainty still. Cutoff lows are the meteorologist's headache at this point because they can be virtually anywhere in this region, but this is where the GFS is modeling it. So as a result, you're going to see the GFS develops this system here Tuesday night into a tropical depression and then lifts it up through the Yucatan here by Wednesday evening and into the southern Gulf of Mexico Wednesday night. At that point, it should strengthen because the wind shear will be favorable for that, low wind shear. Water temperatures are favorable as well. And you can see here the GFS doesn't show us a very scary solution anymore. So all the folks that a few days ago were posting, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricanes, you won't see them posting this, but I'm going to talk to you about it because this storm system, while I think it will become a hurricane, I don't think it's going to be a very powerful one. Now, we never want to say never. Those of you who remember Hurricane Michael know what can happen. But right now, we're not seeing that kind of consensus in our forecast models. They've all kind of come into range of strong tropical storm, Category 1, maybe Category 2 hurricane. So the GFS takes it up towards Panama City with landfall here late Thursday night, then continues and slows things down a bit over Georgia Friday into Saturday. GFS also, by the way, does show additional development in the Caribbean heading into early October, meaning the Gulf may not be finished, but that's just one model run. Here's the Canadian. And you can see the Canadian has the low pressure farther to the west and across the Yucatan. It doesn't evolve into the Gulf until Wednesday afternoon. It's in the same spot Beryl was. And as a result, it may be a little bit weaker. You can see it is getting tugged westward from what the GFS was showing and takes more aim at Mobile than it would Pensacola or Panama City. But again, it's kind of broad at this point. It's not a super strong storm according to the Canadian because of the time spent over the Yucatan. So we're really not going to know exactly what this looks like until we see it move past the Yucatan Wednesday evening. So between now and then, things are probably going to still change. After this moves away, instead of accelerating northeast, it gets stuck here in the south right on into next weekend, meaning quite a bit more rain and even a zombie storm that tries to retreat back into the Gulf here the following week. Again, that's highly uncertain, but you can see that, again, we may see some development in the Western Caribbean in the beginning of October, meaning we're probably not done in the Gulf after this system. Here's the European model. I don't have the 12Z just yet, so we're going to take a look at the 0Z real quick. And you can see it's got development very close to where the Canadian has it, right near Cancun and Cozumel here Wednesday morning, tracking across the Yucatan and then moving into the Southern Gulf Wednesday night as a weaker system, then strengthening and getting picked up and accelerating to the northeast. And you can see the European is struggling to figure out where exactly this low is going to be. As a result, it's weaker because it's broader. It doesn't have that concentrated low, but it's farther west than the other models. And as a result, maybe more of a threat to Louisiana, but also a lot slower by a couple of days here, with this European run not showing landfall until Sunday afternoon, very close to Apalachicola and the western part of the Big Bend region. And then it hovers around into the southeast the following week, which honestly to me is just going to be as bad because these places have already had so much rain. And with a slow-moving low the following week, this could be a natural disaster depending on where it ends up going. Here's the AI forecast from the European. It is more in line with the GFS. It's got landfall close to the Florida-Alabama border here near Pensacola late Thursday night, early Friday morning, and then stuck in parts of the deep south, but not heading into the Carolinas. Then you can see staying unsettled beyond that over the southeast, but it doesn't have the Caribbean storm. And then here's the control run of the European ensemble from earlier, and it is closer to the European operational, taking that low close to Louisiana, but then turning it again to the northeast. And eventual landfall, according to this run, would be Saturday night, early Sunday morning near Apalachicola. So what I see here is just a lot of range of possibilities, but we are honing in on the area that is most likely to get it. But the bigger concern might be, where does it go after making landfall? The timing of this is an extreme variable at this point. It could zip close very quickly into the Florida Panhandle Thursday night and move into the Carolinas Friday and Saturday, or it could do what the Euro is showing and form and move farther west and then dawdle around right through next weekend with eventual landfall on Sunday, and then still kind of hovering around this area into the following week. We just have way too much that can still happen at this point. So I'm making a forecast now, but I will tell you guys my certainty level is not super high. All right, here's a look at the rest of the East Coast. You can see a boundary here between the Bahamas and Bermuda. That's going to bring some heavy rain. Taking a look at the Central Atlantic, pretty quiet here. We do have shower activity across the Windward Islands and the Southern Leeward Islands. There's a bit of a trough in here bringing us some southwest flow, which is good, keeps the tropical systems away, but bad in producing a lot of rain in some of these islands here this afternoon. Here's our two disturbances. The remains of Gordon starting to look a little bit healthier, but again, I don't think we're going to see development there. Actually, that's 96L. This is the remains of Gordon. Man, too many little spins to keep track of at this point. But again, nothing super scary at this point. Here's the remains of Gordon. No thunderstorm activity near the center, just a naked swirl at this point. Here's 96L, a little bit healthier looking, but we don't have a concentration near the center, so we can't classify this as a tropical depression. It may have those kind of winds, but again, it's just going to be a fish storm. And then finally, coming off of Africa, a couple of healthier looking waves to keep an eye on down the road. The GFS model does eventually try to develop these. This is the first area here by next Thursday. This is that yellow area I showed you, and the GFS does develop it into a stronger system here, but turns it away to the right. And then a weaker system behind it that we should probably keep an eye on beyond that into the second week of October. And finally, across the pond here, we do have now tropical storm Pulasan. It was a storm that hit near Shanghai, turned right back out, went across South Korea, Busan, and now a tropical storm hitting portions of central Japan from the west. But it's very weak, just a quick moving rainmaker at this point. The system, a bigger concern, is just north of Taiwan. Just a depression, but bringing heavy rain into China near Guangzhou. Yet another system hitting this part of the world here. We've had so many in the last month. And if you're in the Gulf, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but this is what you see. When there's rising motion for several weeks and above average water temperatures, we see multiple storms. Well, guess what? That rising motion that's been in the Western Pacific is starting to shift. And next week and beyond, it's going to be sticking around here in the Gulf and in the Western Caribbean. And of course, I'll keep you guys posted on that as I see fit, as we see the potential for any more threats. I hope you guys have a great Saturday. I'm going to try to get a video out tomorrow. A lot of family stuff going on. But as always, I appreciate y'all's time. If you did enjoy this video, I ask that you become a subscriber and share with your friends as well, and like the video. And if you have forecast questions, please be respectful. I'm going to do my best to help you guys out, but I appreciate the respect. I give all my honor, all my glory to the Lord and to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who just gives me so much hope and so much joy in my life, even though this is such a stressful spot to be in as a forecaster. I've done this for over 20 years on YouTube for two now, and it's never gotten any easier. We just have more data in our face. And honestly, there are days where I wake up where I just have to scratch my head and say, I know the public's going to think I'm going to be wrong about this because I just don't know what's going to happen. I think the Lord knows, but it's not up to us to be able to outdo what he can do. The good thing, though, is because the Lord sent his son and Savior, Jesus Christ, to save us, people like me have that hope. Paul tells the church of Philippi, 4:13, Philippians 4:13, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I don't want you thinking that you don't have that glory as well, because you very much can accept Jesus as your Savior, as I did over 11 years ago. The same Lord that serves me is the same Lord that saves you. The same Lord that brought multiple people out of oppression is the one that can save you as well. And that's just my encouragement today. It's not to beat you over the head with scripture. It is to share the good news that it is there for you for the taking. I hope you all have a wonderful Saturday. And as always, I will keep you posted. Take care.